Punch the demon face. Just punch it. Yeah, I know it's got teeth. Punch it on the head. Like, they're always like, no, punch it. Like, there's a little girl whose life is in danger. Do something other than just yell.
Foreign Bodies, Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, only on Sci-Fi For Me TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the H2O podcast. My name is Jason Hunt,
and I'm Timothy Harvey.
And not a celebratory episode tonight, just mainly because there's stuff going on, and we don't really like what's going on, but we got to talk about it a little bit anyway. So. Hopefully you're having a pretty decent week. I'm
or them?
Everybody, just anyone. Everybody.
Yes.
I don't know. I see Sci-Fi Snob in the chat, Death Angel Shadow, Robert, Dave. Good to have all of you here. And yeah, it's one of those where we have news that we didn't really like. Of course, it usually goes this way. We've had a lot of people passing away in the last couple of weeks. Notable names. James Caan, Paul Sorvino. We've got word over the weekend for Bill Russell and Pat Carroll, who was the voice of Ursula in The Little Mermaid, among a lot of different other things. And Tony Dow last week, and David Warner before that. So we're going to talk, and then of course yesterday we get the news that Nichelle Nichols passed away, and then there were three. The only ones that are left now are William Shatner, George Takei, and Walter Koenig, and everybody else is gone.
Now, in the way that you just notice as you get older, is that these are folks who actually lived into their 80s. Yeah. They had full lives. You don't want to lose them, but at the same time, it comes for us all, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that they are actually, had the careers that they had and the lives that they had, is something to celebrate. So while yes, it is sad that we've lost them, there is a lot to celebrate about both these two's lives and of course all the lives that we've seen pass away. And you and I, we talk about getting older all the time, and one of the pros and cons of it is that we get all these incredible talent. We get exposed to it when we're kids. So they've been part of our lives this entire time, which is amazing. We got to enjoy that for the entire life. So I think there's certainly for, if you're in your 40s or 50s, this might have a much bigger impact to you than someone who's in their 20s, just because we've had a life with these folks. Yeah. They've been part of our entertainment world in a way that, I think we've been really lucky. It's the same thing we talked about when Bowie passed away, is that, imagine, how much of our lives have been influenced by that one guy's music, not to mention everybody else's music who influenced us, of course. But I mean, right. How much actually how much he was part of genre, and then you look at somebody like, the influence that Nichelle Nichols had, or just the sheer range of genre roles that Warner played. I mean, and I had forgotten about Nichelle Nichols' other voice work.
Right.
I just completely it had just gone out of my head, and I'm like, oh wait, oh yeah, she was on. That's right.
Yeah.
I was just looking at this stuff, going, she was on that show.
Yep. Just to let you know, your microphone is popping a lot right now, so just wanted to
All
give
right,
you a heads up there. And yes, to answer the question in the chat, Grace Lee Whitney passed away in 2015 at the age of 85. So yeah, she's been gone for a while. And yeah, you've got Nichelle Nichols passing away at age 89. You have David Warner was 80 when he passed away, and of course, yeah, long and distinguished careers for the both of them. Although, I think Nichols probably faced the same kind of issues that most of the supporting cast of the original series faced, being typecast. You didn't have as much opportunity for them as everything else. Robert, as far as I know, Alan Dean Foster is just fine. Nothing's gone wrong with him yet. So, and of course, his Star Trek connection is doing the novelizations of the animated series.
Right.
So,
she kind of picked up a whole new life by really kind of being a spokesperson for NASA.
yeah.
I mean, so she while her acting career, yeah, I think there was a fair amount of typecasting that she got stuck with. But at the same time, you go back and you look at the things she did beyond that, of course, being a representative, really encouraging folks to, minority and female applicants and recruits for NASA, and considering the importance of really being, encouraging the sciences and encouraging that kind of interaction with a new generation of folks coming into that's really important work. It's just not necessarily big profile. It's not like it's a starring role in a movie, but
not glamorous.
In many ways it's a lot more important than any starring role in a movie.
Well, and one direct consequence of that, you have Dr. Mae Jemison, who decided to be an astronaut because she saw Uhura up there on the TV screen and said, "Hey, there's somebody who looks like me out in space," and there we go. So, and then Mae Jemison shows up in Star Trek: The Next Generation. So it kind of goes full circle now.
I think that's something that you can often see the dark side of celebrity, and folks who are we see this a lot where people are like, this celebrity is so important. It's like they don't even know who you are, and we have a bit of this obsession with celebrity, and so there's a lot of dark sides to it. But the positive side is something like this, where she can go out and she can speak, and promote NASA and inspire folks that way, and not that's the positive side of things.
Yeah,
and that's if nothing else, that's a pretty impressive legacy, but that's not all she did, of course.
Well, and Death Angel Shadow talks about the NASA recruitment. There is a documentary that came out, I want to say last year, Woman in Motion. This is basically the story of Nichelle getting involved in the recruitment program at NASA to try to boost and bolster the participation of women and minorities in the space program. To much success. I mean, there's a number of people who are astronauts who otherwise would not be. Sally Ride being one of them, and it's it's hit or miss. I mean, you talk about the lack of quality of the space program as it is now, the fact that we're stuck in orbit and we haven't gone anywhere since we landed on the moon. That's a source of frustration for a lot of people, but
Sure.
There are a number of reasons for that, and I think a lot of them are political more than anything else. It's just
I think
not to get into that
maybe
tonight, but
there's a conversation one of these days, because of course, there was a whole lot of how humanity was going to reach the stars in this some of the foundational science fiction that we grew up on.
Yeah.
And then we get into the realities of the real world, and how much of exploration was driven by politics. I mean, the whole conflict with the Soviet Union. We must reach the moon first, and then we do, and it's like, okay, now we've done it, and everybody just,
Yeah. Now what?
yeah.
Well, it's funny, and
I
I've
think
talked about it before, but I saw an interview with Buzz Aldrin back in the early '80s. Well, no, it was later than that. It was an anniversary of Apollo 11, and he was on Nightline talking to Ted Koppel, and maybe this was mid to late '90s. I can't remember. It was a specific anniversary, but I can't remember which one. And he was telling Koppel that the original program, as it was lined up going forward from Apollo, if we had stayed on that timeline, we would have had an operational manned base on Mars by 1980. And the reason we didn't is because Nixon looked at the space program and didn't see any political advantage to it, and put a pause on the whole thing. And of course, the money, Congress has to authorize the money to be spent on this stuff, which is why we never got Apollo 17, Apollo 18. What 18 I think was the one we didn't get. But yeah, to hear that, and to hear, this is Buzz Aldrin. He ought to know. I mean, this is not just some random person off the street who studied the program. He was in it. And he says, we would have been on Mars by 1980 if we had stayed on the trajectory we were on. I'm just like ready to pull my hair out. I was like, why aren't we on Mars yet?
And the sad thing is that inertia kicks in. Once you stop giving a program enough money to do the job, or stop having that momentum go forward.
Yeah.
And government moves slowly on purpose. There's a lot of benefit to government moving slowly, except when you need it to move quickly. Right. But something like that, it's really, really easy for it to stop becoming a priority. And now on the plus side, I'd be really concerned what we've learned about the effects of zero G on the human body. And the level of radiation that you actually are exposed to on the surface of Mars. I'd be really concerned for the welfare of a whole bunch of, there's risk to so many things like this. Exploration always comes with risk.
Yeah.
But they were not aware in that time period just how much radiation the surface of Mars actually gets. They were not aware how much, the bone density in your starts to go away very quickly in zero gravity, and there's a whole set of challenges that science fiction never prepared us for. And it's like, yeah, but
yeah. Well, and once we get artificial gravity figured out, then half of those problems go away, right?
You just got to spin the thing really fast, right?
That's right, like they did in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, you talk about Nichelle Nichols recruiting for NASA, and it was one of those key things. And there are times when I have to bite my tongue on a lot of these celebrities taking up causes now, because the way they go about it is not conducive to everybody holding them in a certain amount of esteem. But with somebody like Nichelle, who had the reputation she had for Star Trek, and that connection into, well, she's already been in, it's like William Shatner going up in the Blue Origin thing. I mean, he's actually gone into space. He's played a guy who worked in space. Now he's gone into space, and that connection is kind of natural to have, because look at the letter writing campaign that convinced Gerald Ford to change the name of the first orbiter. Instead of L-101, it became the Enterprise. Well, of course it did. I mean, it's only natural that you do that. And to have her connected to both Star Trek and NASA, when you stop and consider that the story that she tells about Martin Luther King coming up to her and saying, you can't quit. You've kicked open a door and it could close if you leave, and that sort of thing. Where then she goes into NASA and does it for real in the real space program, not just in entertainment, in science fiction, but in television at large, where she's playing somebody other than a maid, and now she's recruiting for the actual space programs. Like, we're pulling people in who are actually going to go do this for real. Right. And there's a significance there that I think some people might not.
Well, it's not as glamorous. I mean, again, we come back to celebrity. It's we see these folks who are up on our screens, whether it's the big screen or the television screen, and we see them all the time. And again, people get these sort of weird connections to these people who they don't actually know. And in many ways, she went out and did the work versus showing up and getting, you're on a film set or a TV set for only so long. She did this for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
This wasn't a thing where it's like, I'm coming in to do my job, and then I'm on to the next job. This was a commitment to, improving the reach of NASA to people who at that particular time weren't necessarily feeling that they would be welcomed at NASA, which is, science is for everybody. So
yeah,
the Star Trek was kind of about the stars being for us all. So, crying out loud, they had to rush it on the bridge.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. Go through her credits, and you talk about doing the work. She stayed busy, even though even though her career was not all of this huge stuff. She's doing a bunch of stuff, but I guess most notable, Sharknado 5. Because I mean, that's the pinnacle of the career right there, right?
Well, I mean, she got a daytime Emmy nomination for a soap opera, The Young and the Restless.
Young and the Restless. She was on that
in 2016. So it wasn't like I mean, well, I think no, that was 2017 when she got the nomination. But I mean, she was on Young and the Restless. She did voice work for Gargoyles or Batman the Animated Series.
She was on Heroes.
Yeah, she was in Heroes. Heroes is a vague, fuzzy thing, just because after the first season, I think a lot of people unfortunately feel that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've completely forgotten she'd been in it, and that's not a slam on her performance. That's unfortunately the whole, Heroes. But I mean, yeah, she worked quite a bit. A lot of stuff though, she was voice work, and you forget that she was a dancer. Leaving aside that scene in Star Trek V that a lot of people, yeah, it's not a great scene. But I mean, she was a dancer, she was a singer. These talents that you don't necessarily think, but she continued to use in her career. Just again, not as high profile, not as
the sad part is you sit there and you talk about her getting discovered by Duke Ellington, and there are going to be a lot of people that sit there and say, who? And they don't know who Duke Ellington is. The significance of it, it's like, this is Duke Ellington. He's a major influence in music, and a lot of our history is getting lost just because there are people who are young who don't care.
Well, I think there's
now
so
the people are young, they don't care.
Periodically I find myself going onto YouTube and watching reaction videos.
Oh yeah,
you got to sometimes it's like nice good background noise while you're working on something else, right? And there's a couple of them that I actually like, which is it's like a a father and their kid, or a mother and their kid, or
Mm.
or a husband and a wife. It's somebody who, and one of them knows the subject matter, one of them has no idea. And the music ones are the best because it's like somebody's like, okay, I'm going to introduce you to The Cure, or Rob Zombie, or Waylon Jennings, or I mean, it's just like it's this all over the place kind of range of things. And some of it's really fun because you get to watch these kids get exposed to this for the very first time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they'd never heard, some amazing blues artist. They never heard Robert Johnson, right?
Right.
Or they've never heard,
Charlie
great.
Daniels.
My dad doesn't like jazz. I like jazz, um, but so I my exposure to jazz came later. But the fact that there's some hope for this, right? Because you have these people out there going, come, small child,
Yeah.
let me expose you to the stuff that I grew up on. And I think that there's some hope for that, because this stuff is still around.
I introduced
And
my kid to Benny Goodman when he was very, very young, and he enjoyed it. He thought it was kind of cool, especially you get into the drum sequence on Sing Sing Sing, and I mean, hooked.
I had back in my Borders days when I was working with I was my part of my job was bringing in the local artists, local musicians, local writers, and we would have
Yeah.
get their books of music on the shelves and have events and things like that. We had a guy who used to be in radio and was one of the big, and this is back in Wichita, Kansas. So he was one of the big radio guys in Wichita, who was like really popular for having these eclectic music tastes and these big selections of music. And he had gotten the rights to be able to put out these like compilations of like his shows, which had this music somehow.
Right.
And so I've got them. I've still got them on CD. It's like, this is like some of the best. This is like all the great big band music. This is like all the great blues stuff. These are fantastic compilation discs. Never sold particularly well, but they sold all right. I mean, they weren't, they didn't fly off the shelves. But there's still hope. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who don't realize how much, if you're a fan of modern rock or modern rap, there's so much blues influence in that. There's so much jazz influence in that. Hopefully we have enough people who are carrying that on to.
Yeah, well, Death Angel said, I'm a metalhead, but I know The Cure and Waylon Jennings and the Eagles. So there's hope.
I can't remember what it's called, but one of the reaction things, it's like metalheads listen to.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, and again, it's all over the place. And that's some of the fun thing is some of the best ones are the folks who they know the genre that they like, right? So if they're a rap fan, they can talk about all the great rap artists and all this stuff, but they've never been exposed to 1960s country, or they've never been exposed to 1950s doo-wop. I mean, they've never had, and now they're getting it and they're like, this is really fun. Or why was this popular? I mean, they're not going to like everything, but they're kind of fun. So I mean, if you guys ever want to like, entertain yourself with alternately feeling hopeful and feeling old.
Yeah. Well, and
some of those are fun.
And it's those of us who are of an age, when you talk about various different music styles and genres and whatnot, you're always the cover bands and everything like that, where you have these people who dress up as Kiss or Motley Crue or Joan Jett and the Blackhearts or whoever, and they'll do tribute bands. So it's almost like cover bands are like fan fiction. It's like the fan films. cover bands are the fan film equivalent, and that gets me into the fan film because we got one coming up that was Nichelle Nichols' last role that hasn't been out there yet. It's called Renegades Amanara, and it's in what used to be pre-Axanar. It was Star Trek Renegades. Post-Axanar, it was Renegades. They had to file all of the serial numbers off,
Right.
and it was a big pain in the neck from the stories that I heard. But they went back in and they changed everything so it was no longer a Star Trek fan film, so they wouldn't have to be restricted by the new rules, the post-Axanar rules. Thanks, Alec.
Axanar.
Yeah, so she is the title character. She plays the older version of Amanara. I don't know the story, but that still has yet to come out. I'm not sure. I think they're close to completion, so it should be coming out here, sometime soon. But
I'm looking forward to that. That'd be cool to see.
so,
I mean, and we're talking about the good that she did, but she was recognized during her life for not only doing these things but being influential to the genre. She got awards.
Yeah.
She's got, of course, the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Heinlein dedicated Friday to her. Heinlein's novel Friday was dedicated to Nichelle Nichols.
Well, and she wrote a couple of books too.
Yeah, she did. She's got was it 2 bios?
No, she did. Well, she did some. She's got her autobiography, but she wrote a couple of fiction books. And I want to say one of them was a Star Trek book that she co-wrote. I'll have to look that up. But the other thing, though, I mean, when all of this came out, that she was, her life circumstances being what they were. You talk about people in decline physically and mentally. She'd been battling dementia and had some health issues. And one thing that I noticed when the news came out is that some of them, like Deadline, some of the trade paperbacks, and some of the trade magazines and whatnot, they referred to Gilbert Bell as confirming the news. Gilbert Bell, her business partner and her manager, who has been the subject of lawsuits from Kyle Johnson, Nichelle Nichols' son, and the family, basically saying Gilbert Bell has taken advantage of her all of these years and taken advantage of her dementia and taken advantage of her health condition to basically sponge money off of her. Right. And that whole thing has, as I watched, I read the articles as that played out, and I'm thinking how sad it is that in the last days, and we had this happen with Stan Lee. You've got these circumstances where certain people who are of an age need to be in a place where they can be taken care of.
And think about this. The part that really disturbs me about those stories is those are the high-profile ones that we hear about.
Yeah,
we hear about them because it's Stan Lee and Nichelle Nichols. We don't hear about the folks who are, it's not on the same scale. They don't have the same income, but this happens to ordinary people who aren't famous for being, Marvel Comics and Star Trek star.
Yeah. And I just looked it up. She wrote Beyond Uhura, which was her autobiography, and then she wrote Saturn's Child with Margaret Wander Bonanno.
Yeah.
Which is not a Star Trek book, but it's a science fiction book. And I kept thinking that there was supposed to be a sequel to that, and we never got it. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, it's you never know how things are going to go.
Right.
You know, and you would think that people who have that kind of reputation, you know, somebody like Nichelle Nichols, who has the notoriety that she has for playing, you know, Uhura. She's been part of Star Trek, the zeitgeist, and the big influence
Right.
that show has had, not just in science fiction but socially. You would think that she'd have a little bit better circumstances.
Well, I think we also run into what happens as we get older. You get to a certain age, and people tend to expect you to not have as many um, appearances. You know, you're not out in the public eye as much,
Yeah.
and the less you're in the public eye, it's much easier to not recognize this stuff is happening to you. And if it goes on long enough, you're out of the public eye long enough, it's just the nature of celebrity is you kind of slip out of the mind. And it doesn't, you know, it's not a malevolent thing, it's not a conscious thing where people are going, I'm just going to forget about it. It's just
It just happens.
how the world works.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where if you could see how someone could take advantage of this. I've heard enough of the situation, the rumors of the situations and the discussions of the situation. A lot of it at this point, as far as I can tell, has not been proven. Right, lots of allegation,
Right. Yeah. There's
and a lot of
lawsuits and
a lot of back and
countersuits and yeah.
yeah. So and so, I mean, in the fairness of, you know,
Yeah, because
being
the
fair,
family has accused Belle of elder abuse and taking advantage
right,
of her financially and basically stealing her money
right,
and you know glomming on to various different appearance deals and taking the fees and whatever else. Belle has countered and basically said, "Well, Kyle is the guy who's abusing his mother, and you know, there's all this stuff." To the question, Robert's question about substance abuse, I have not heard anything. I haven't read anything anywhere that there was any kind of a problem with substance abuse. The biggest thing was Nichelle Nichols is in physical decline. She's suffering from dementia, and as that got worse, there were concerns that the people around her were taking advantage of her. And you've got Belle saying that it was the son, and you've got the son saying it was Belle, and you know, neener back and forth. So there's lawsuit and counter lawsuit going back and forth. Who knows what's going to happen with it now? I would imagine
right.
it'd probably be well. I
It's
don't
going to
know
be no.
because now it becomes
This
now
sort
it
of thing
becomes a
can go on
disposition
for a
of the
long time
estate.
after someone dies.
Yeah, because now what happens to the estate? Who gets it?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That'll be bad. So I don't know. It's just it's a sad deal. And you know, I wish the family the best. I
Oh yeah.
hope
No,
they're able to
and
work it all out. But
I think that we've been very lucky in having, you know, being able to grow up with these people in our lives and on our screens and representing things that have had I mean, you look at some of the things that, you know, everybody, you periodically, you know, you hear about the what first interracial kiss. It wasn't actually the first interracial kiss on television. It was
right.
probably the biggest, highest profile one. And you think about, you know, what might have been if we hadn't had Uhura. Would we have had Eartha Kitt as Catwoman?
Probably not.
I mean, and it's, you think about that, but that's a big deal. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I don't think you would have had, you know, the ripples, right? You know, the waves that you that were made by Nichelle Nichols as she moved through this world. I mean, yeah, for the entertainment side of things, you know, some Martin Luther King comes up to you and says, "Stay on a TV show." I mean, think about, you know, that's rippled. You know, she put people into space just by the influence of her existence.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. I mean,
That's pretty big.
that's that's pretty big. She's definitely a life to celebrate, and you know, even if you've never seen her other stuff or noticed her other voice work, um, I have not seen. She did a blaxploitation film, that I have not seen, and now I'm curious about. I'm like, because she played against type in that film. You got this idea of Uhura and the visual. You get this perception, and you see, when she talks, when you've seen, if you've ever seen her, talking about her life or talking about Star Trek, she seems like such a nice, pleasant person.
Right.
And apparently, she was very against type, and that's always fun to see as an actor. See somebody who's like, let's step outside the range of what you know them for. That's always fun to see, but
Right.
not a genre film.
All right. When we get back, we're going to talk about the career of David Warner. We also lost him on the 25th last month. So we're going to take a very quick break. Be back right after this. Don't go anywhere.
You're watching the H2O podcast, only on Sci-Fi for Me TV.
A little bit of an experiment here this morning, trying to make all of this work, so just bear with us for a minute. It's a work in progress.
Since 2019, Sci-Fi for Me has been bringing you news and opinion from all over the web. Science fiction, fantasy, and horror have been on our radar from the beginning. News, rumors, we bring you the latest with our team coverage. Streaming original content every week. Good Morning Multiverse, live on Sci-Fi for Me TV, delivering the multiverse since 2009.
Oh my goodness, that, Jason, is probably, I think, the hardest question you're going to ask.
Interviews with writers, filmmakers, artists, and actors.
That's a good question, though.
That's an interesting question.
That's a great question.
Count on Sci-Fi for Me to be there asking all of the questions.
It's another great question. These are all really good questions.
Bringing you news and opinion from all over the web. Sci-Fi for Me, delivering the multiverse since 2009. Thanks for watching Sci-Fi for Me TV. Be sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our channels so you don't miss our next broadcast. You're watching Sci-Fi for Me TV, delivering the multiverse since 2009.
Well, I'm back. I'm not sure where Jason is.
I figure we don't really show off the studio that much, so we'll let people see some different pieces and parts of the set down here. Welcome back, everyone. This is the H2O podcast. Jason Hunt here, along with Timothy Harvey.
Hello.
And now we're going to get into the other legacy to discuss, that of actor David Warner. And we see,
holy crap, he's done so much genre work.
I know he has. And it's, you look at some of the stuff. I mean, sure, there's Tron, and there's Time Bandits, and there's Time After Time, and there's Star Trek, and there's Star Trek, and there's Star Trek.
and there's like multiple characters across multiple types of media in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
He's been the Doctor. If you weren't aware of this, he's both the Doctor in Doctor Who Unbound, which is a series of alternate Doctors that from Big Finish, but also the Bernice Summerfield, which are not exactly non-canon, but not exactly canon. They're sort of limbo territory. They're part of the Virgin line of books that is no longer canon to the BBC stuff, but it's sort of continued on. Big Finish continued on using them. So
right.
David Warner's The Doctor shows up in those, and it's, gray, fuzzy, nebulous stuff. It's great. It's fantastic stuff. He's so good as the Doctor.
That would have been interesting to see if he had been an official Doctor,
Oh, yeah. I want to say that at some point it had actually come up. And I think it was just a scheduling thing or whatever, where it just wasn't going to work out, or I could be confusing. I can't remember, but he's one of those actors. He was in during the Matt Smith years. He was on screen for the first time in Doctor Who, and I can't remember the name of the episode, but it was it's on the tip of my brain too. Right there. It is.
I'm looking.
I'm going to find it real quick. It is Cold War. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Okay.
And he played a professor there, and he's been. I mean, he was in Penny Dreadful. He was in Agatha Christie stuff. He's been on, the Hornblower miniseries, Batman Beyond. He was Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah. He had quite a bit of voice work that he did.
Oh yeah. Well, and Freakazoid.
No.
I mean, Freakazoid is one of those shows that when I find it's being broadcast again, I can just sit there and watch it because it's so. I mean, it's so clearly just we're gonna have fun.
Yeah.
I can watch that a lot. But yeah, I mean, he did. He got a nomination for his work with Batman, the animated series, for his voice work.
No.
The Annie Award Outstanding Individual Achievement for Voice Acting by a Male Performer. And apparently he didn't win, but he was nominated nonetheless.
No.
So,
Dave says, David Warner always made my viewing experiences better. And Robert's realizing that he was in Batman and Spider-Man and Gargoyles.
oh yeah, he was all. I mean, he was someone who clearly enjoyed doing genre work, and he had a face for it.
Yeah. Yeah, Robert's saying this saying can't believe he wasn't more of a leading man because his face had so much character to it.
Well, I think that he had the ability to play both very, very good characters and very, very evil characters.
Yeah.
And he had that
in different characters with Star Trek V.
Oh yeah,
this is like whatever. I don't care anymore.
I just saw a thing, during one of the news stories that pops up. It's like they were interviewing the actress who played the Romulan representative in Star Trek V.
Oh, right.
The deleted scene had come up again, right, where it's like you see some of the character development that you got for the Klingon ambassador and David Warner's Federation ambassador and the Romulan ambassador. And she was talking about how they had plotted out their entire character arcs. So at the beginning, they were like, very antagonistic, and he was very condescending. And by the end, they were a couple. So they would sit there in their makeup and just chat and have like a great time. And they'd wait on the guy who played the Klingon because his makeup was so much harder. And she would start off her day sitting next to Leonard Nimoy, getting into makeup. And it was just like she really enjoyed the experience. But you look at some of them, for a lot of people, if you're a genre fan and you're not following the voice work, you're looking at him from Star Trek: The Next Generation, playing one of the most one of the best kind of villains.
Yeah.
Not a cackling, maniacal, over-the-top villain, someone who is cold and ruthless and very scary.
Yeah, that's and I still I use the whole "there are four lights" at the end of my show just to remind people not everything is what they want you to think that it is, and this is it's almost like that other it's like the episode Darmok where you talk in phrases and allegory. Shaka when the walls fell. If I sit there and say there are four lights, it basically is. The government and the media is lying to you, and they're trying to convince you, and lampshade and gaslight, and don't believe them, right? It's they live. Put the sunglasses on. And it's an interesting moment in the series, not only just, for the show in overall, but also for Picard as a character, because Madred broke him.
Mm-hmm.
He admits it at the end. He's like, I saw five lights. And you get that little piece in the coda that Madred actually did what he set out to do. But yeah, he wasn't twisty mustache, wahaha type of villain either. He was just very methodical, very cold, very, very calculating, very deliberate. And I can't really imagine anybody else playing that part that same way.
No, I think part of it was there's something about his voice, and he's one of those actors who, even if you just bury him under makeup, and certainly the Kardashian makeup is, there are a lot of your natural features are covered quite a bit. Although you can get a lot of the actors could clearly do a lot of actual facial movement, which is always nice. But that voice easily slides from charming to just deep, dead inside, my soul is black as night kind of voice. Without, I mean, he was a fantastic stage actor too. I mean, you think, again, so much as a British actor, he moved from film and TV and stage much more fluidly than a lot of American actors at the time, the early days of his career, certainly. We got those more distinctions between those various forms of performance here, but so he's really, really used to having that kind of ability to have the voice do a lot of the heavy lifting, and the charmingness of his evil characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just almost the.
It's refined menace.
Yeah, I mean, it's the example of the polite villain.
Yeah.
Like writ large, though. I mean, because you look at whether it's evil in Time Bandits, or Ra's al Ghul or any of these characters, there's this level of I'm so very pleasant. Now you must die.
Yeah, it's kind of like Alan Rickman in Die Hard. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, and you could I could actually see David Warner in his mid-30s slide into that role.
Yeah.
I think that could actually, that could actually work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
yes, the Kardashians.
Kardashians. Yeah. Okay, so I think for me the notable one, when you look at Star Trek V, and then he turns right back around and we've got David Warner again in Star Trek VI.
Right.
Playing a completely different character.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's got St. John Talbot in Star Trek V, he's got Gorkin, Chancellor of the Klingon Empire, so he's under a bunch of makeup. But it still is David Warner, and I remember at the time when Star Trek VI came out, and I'm watching this, I'm like, why'd they get him? He was just in Star Trek V, playing a different character. Why'd they get David Warner? And there's nothing wrong with his performance. Don't get me wrong. I love his performance as Gorkin, which is kind of an odd name for a Klingon. But yeah, I'm like, why'd they cast him again? It just seemed like an unusual move to make at the time, because we just saw him.
Looked at Star Trek V and said, "We had David Warner, and we wasted David Warner."
Right?
We had guys. Can we see if he'll come back?
I wonder if there's a story there. I'll have to add it to my list of questions to ask Nicholas Meyer if I ever get a chance to interview him.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for potentially that maybe actually being the real story. I mean, because it's really unfortunate when you have this whole subplot of Star Trek V that basically amounts to like 5 minutes of the movie, and you've got one of the just a very recognizable genre character actor with as much history and talent as David Warner. He's like kind of in your movie. So yeah, you definitely got more screen time.
It's just one of those things where I'm like, well, okay, well, it's almost like a do-over, you know?
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like how could you guys not use him better? Let's get him back. Um,
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, there's just, I mean, you just look at this stuff. Buzz Lightyear, the Star Command, the 2000 animated series, Batman Beyond, Superman the animated series. He was on The Hunger, which is not a show I can recommend. Great movie, lousy TV show. He was on the Men in Black cartoon. It just, I mean, all these different roles. Toonsylvania. I mean, just, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. I mean, there's so many like these cartoons that are just great genre cartoons, and he was all over this stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Penny Dreadful, and he had a couple episodes of Penny Dreadful, I think in season 1. Just always great to watch him. And if you've never heard the Doctor Who Unbound audios, they're still out there. They're still available, and I would definitely get a chance to pick those up, because it's an alternate. The idea of that whole series is that, what if this event didn't happen, or this event happened instead? So You've got he was the alternate third Doctor. So what if he never became unit scientific advisor? What would the world look like? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and it really makes you want to see a live action version of some of this stuff. And he got to work with Nicholas Courtney, because it was his alternate third Doctor and the Brigadier traveling together.
Okay. Right.
And there's a 60th anniversary audio that he recorded something for. I don't know how much he did before, but something to do with the 60th anniversary. He's got some audio work in Doctor Who there. Robert, I really like Penny Dreadful. I think it's a really fantastic series. I really wish they had found a way to make the sequel series work.
Yeah.
They didn't. But
yeah, I'm reading through the trivia on Star Trek 6. They offered the part of Gorkin to I just looked at his name. I just went blank. Jack Palance. Can you imagine Jack Palance as a Klingon?
yes. Yes, I can.
I could see him more as General Chang, though.
Oh, yeah, that would have been...
I have so wanted to meet you.
Could you... So you got Jack Palance as Chang, and then you have... wow, this could be fun.
No, Robert, that would be Orkin is the pest control chain, not Gorkon. But that would have been a completely different thing.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Jack Palance. Yeah.
But I think it could have worked. I don't think it would have been. It wouldn't have been as. It wouldn't have been as subtle. I think that there's a Christopher Plummer is going to. Well, Christopher Plummer can certainly, and he does in the course of the film, chew the scenery.
Mm-hmm.
He's also someone who underplays really well.
Yeah,
and that charming grin that he can pull off even underneath Klingon makeup. That's so mocking the way he does it. That would have been a very, very different role with. But I think it would have been fun to see. There's an alternate universe. I'd like to see the version of that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the same
because
universe.
then you put
universe
Plummer
we've
into
got-
the Gorkin role,
Yeah.
and completely changed the tone.
Well, that's the same. That's the same universe where Eric Stoltz still plays Marty McFly, right?
Which means we probably didn't get Back to the Future 2 and 3.
But we did get Tron 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and that, I mean, that was that was another one though. Tron was one of those where you had this groundbreaking process essentially with the effects, and you look at something like the Star Wars prequels trilogy, for example. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday over on Culture Casino's channel, where the CG and the special effects kind of overwhelmed everything else, and the story kind of gets lost in the look at all of the new toys we have to play with, right?
Sure, right.
Tron could have gone the same way. Tron could have been all about the visual effects, and you lose the story. Now the story is not complicated,
No.
but you could still look at all of this. Look at what we can do with this Cray computer, and the story could have gotten lost, and it didn't. And I think one of the things that makes that movie work so well is David Warner's performance on both sides of the connection.
Oh,
both as Sark on the inside, and as his human and as the program counterpart. And it was like you get that sense of menace from both of them, but it's
different tone.
It's different tone, and his human version is a little more slimy, I guess.
But also more of a
Calculating.
corporate villain versus like you could see him.
He's kind of a Lex Luthor type.
Yeah, got that kind of unethical businessman thing versus evil overlord that his counterpart was.
Yeah.
Or well, kind of not really overlord.
Well, because Dillinger is kind of a minion at the same time, because he and Sark both are working for the master computer, right? The big thing.
But Sark's got more of a, because he's in the world.
Yeah, Sark's more of a Darth Vader.
Yeah, he is,
Yeah.
and but with a lot more,
But he makes it work. And the Sark performance is notable in that he never moves. He doesn't go anywhere. He's just standing there.
Right.
And it's all there. And the effects, when he's getting tortured that one spot, all he's doing is just kind of leaning back because everything else was post-production. So it's all performance and body language there for him, and it's not anything else. He's not interacting with anything, and he really sells it. I think it's a really fine piece of work for him.
Well, and he's one of those actors who, like Michael Caine, constantly worked. I mean, you look at this guy's career. There was not like a year where he wasn't doing something.
Yeah,
he wasn't in film. He wasn't in television. He wasn't doing audio recording. He was constantly working. And the last year and a half of his life, he got his cancer diagnosis a year and a half ago. I didn't tell anybody. He just kept working. We get that a lot with a lot of these folks who are performers through their entire lives, where they realize that they're not going to have the time, and they just keep trying to get more of the job done.
Yeah.
Until they can't. And I mean, Bowie did the same thing.
T'Challa, what's his name?
Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman. Yeah, he did the same thing.
Yeah, they just get out and do the work until they can't. And you see this a lot with folks who didn't grow up necessarily in the most stable of conditions where they constantly want to work. Like there's something about the British theater work ethic that they kind of, well, he went to RADA, so the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and that's a, they tend to turn out people who spend their entire career working. They don't take as much time off, and probably because it's the stage life, right? Because if you've ever been a theater actor, and if you ever try to be one professionally, you take the work when it comes,
right?
Because it may not come, and you might not get cast. And so when you get cast, you audition for everything and you go out for everything. And I think that builds a certain amount of constant work ethic that, as genre fans, we lucked out, because Warner clearly likes doing the genre work. I mean, that was clearly something he enjoyed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done as much of it. I mean, it's a significant chunk of his CV.
Yeah.
His genre work, whether it's horror or science fiction or animated stuff, or,
I saw a story when he passed. Somebody was talking. There was a film, a project that he was doing with I can't remember who he was acting with. It was another notable, Shakespearean, highfalutin hoity-toity actor, right? And they were talking about stuff. It's like, what are you gonna do? Oh, I'm headed to the stage. What are you doing, David? I'm about to do something called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze. It's like he was just coming off of this, highfalutin Shakespeare thing, and now doing Secret of the Ooze. It was a fun juxtaposition of, and it goes back to that, let's constantly work. I'm just going to do the thing. It's like Michael Caine doing Jaws. It's a terrible movie, but it's a beautiful house my mother lives in. So
right.
That's what it.
I do actually have a little information about what he's doing for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Yes.
He is playing the alternate Doctor again, and apparently he's going to be sharing some scenes with Christopher Eccleston.
Oh, this is not.
Christopher Eccleston is recording
children.
audio.
Oh, is this just for audio then?
Huh?
This is just for Big Finish, or do you think maybe he shows
just for
up?
Big Finish.
Oh, okay.
It's just for Big Finish. So, and I know. Well, Christopher Eccleston has said that he will never be on screen again with multiple Doctors.
Which is a shame.
I think he said he would be okay if he would do it for audio.
Yeah.
And maybe, or maybe he just sat there and went, "Yes, I want to work with David Warner."
Sure. Well,
yeah.
And that's a little disappointing, because Eccleston's expressed some regret about not staying on the show. But of course, there are reasons, there are circumstances, whatnot, and I just got to thinking, maybe he'd come back, but it was Davies that he had clashes with the first time, so he probably won't.
Well, it was Davies and Davies' bosses.
Yeah.
Now, of course, with the new series that Davies is going to be producing, of course, is Davies' own production company, doing the heavy lifting. So if they can bury the hatchet, I think the advantage there is going to be that they're not going to have to fight the BBC. And quite frankly, I think some of the people that were around in the BBC during the early days of the revival aren't there anymore, or different divisions and things like that.
Yeah.
It's been long enough that those folks aren't necessarily there. But the fact that he's actually been willing to go back to do the audio and record audio
it's a step.
as the Ninth Doctor, I think is really great.
Yeah.
Because he's one of those actors that, quite frankly, if he had not been as good as he was in that first year of the revival, because we've talked about this before, that first year's got some rocky episodes.
Yes, it does.
But it's carried by Eccleston and his Doctor and Rose and bringing those things back in, that bringing the continuity back in a measured way. It's nice to see him back as the Ninth Doctor, even if it's only for audio. But the other nice thing about the audio work is that Christopher Eccleston has gotten older himself. He doesn't quite look the same as he did when he donned the black coat, but his voice still sounds the same.
Well, and you know they've wiggled a little bit on that, you know, because you know with Time Crash, like it was a throwaway line, but they you know they hand waved him and it was fine.
Doctor Who often runs on the power of hand waving.
Yes.
So
yes. All right.
He's one of the Warner is one of those actors who he has been in some really, really bad movies. And he has cheerfully been some of the best parts of that. He was in Unnameable 2.
Yeah.
If you've never heard of me talk about Unnameable 1, I can name it. It's an attractive woman in a monster costume. That's what that is. That's nameable. I just named it. And in the second one, it's Julie Strain, who is also an attractive woman in a monster costume. I named that too. This is not unnameable.
Wait, why would you put Julie Strain in a monster costume?
Because you wanted to confuse the libido of the teenage boys watching this movie.
I mean, that's
sex and death, man.
That just defeats the purpose. That defeats the purpose of having Julie Strain in the picture. Of course, I haven't seen the costume, so
you want the sexy monster to make the audience go, I am strangely titillated, and in theory afraid. It wasn't scary. But David Warner's in the second one, and he's clearly enjoying his paycheck.
Like you do.
I mean, you know, why not?
Yeah.
And I think he was in a couple other. He was in Cast a Deadly Spell, where he played the rich guy who set all the evil things into motion, and that was a fun riff on Lovecraft. He was also in The Man with Two Brains. I mean, come on, The Man with Two Brains.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Office Party.
He did a lot.
In the Mouth of Madness.
Speaking of enjoying a paycheck, you could support us in that way. We do have a PayPal link, although you know PayPal being PayPal, and we've got a Subscribe Star thing there. We're on a number of different social media platforms where you can connect with us there. And I do want to encourage you to connect with us on Odyssey. Our count is up to 190. And also check out Sci-Fi For Me TV.2, which is our new channel that we've put on here for the replay. So the live stuff is going to live here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to upload it over to the TV.2. So it's never going to be live material over there. Let's see if we can trick the algorithm a little bit. See what happens. I don't know. It's an experiment. We'll see what happens. I don't know. And then tomorrow night we got a new conversation in the Ranker Pit, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, and a programming note for anybody who's interested. Good Morning Multiverse is not Good Morning Multiverse. Live from the bunker, we're going to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule for August. So if any of you are watching that show, we won't have it tomorrow. It'll be on Wednesday. And Robert, no, we don't get any income streaming on Odyssey. Well, there's blockchain. There's crypto over on Odyssey. So we do have a little bit of something, but I'm not sure exactly what to do with it. So
considering the value of crypto right now, do we have anything?
Well, that's well, let me look, because according to this we have 2,069 and point blah 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 of whatever these tokens are for library. I don't know what library calls their unit of measure. You know,
right,
it's
sure.
not an ether bit or whatever it is. We have 2,000 of them. So I don't have any idea how much that's worth, because I don't have a digital wallet set up in any of this stuff for crypto stuff, and I don't know anything about this. It's there. I haven't done anything with
It
it.
could be negative numbers considering the state of crypto right now.
I don't know. I just I don't know. It's odd. I don't know exactly how all of this stuff works. So, but yeah, we've
Crypto. Turns out unregulated systems have some issues.
There are consequences.
That's why there's regulation.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to do it for us tonight, folks. Thanks very much for being here, and we will do this all again next week. I've got our list. I've got notes on some different things that we're going to talk about.
Since we're talking crypto, we might as well talk about. We could talk about the Spice DAO.
Oh yes, we'll do
about that next week.
So we'll tease it a little bit here, because somebody bought one of the books about Jodorowsky's Dune. The design books,
the Bible from the production. So this was actually this was script notes. This was artwork. This was costume designs. There's like 20 of these things made in the world.
And somebody bought one and decided
for something like 6 times what it was supposed to be worth.
Yeah. And now they think that they own the rights to make one. So, yeah, and it's a story. We'll get into that next week. So join us for that. And in the meantime, have a great week. Check out in the rest of the videos that we've got. Feel free to share. Use the hashtag Sci-Fi for Me TV, so we can track this stuff and see what you do. So, all right, that's it for tonight. Thanks very much for being here, folks.
Copyright 2022 by Flaming Dog Media, LLC. All rights reserved. No portion of this program may be retransmitted without the express written consent of Flaming Dog Media. You're watching Sci-Fi for Me TV, delivering the multiverse since 2009.